All right, if it's okay with you, I'm going to start letting folks in.
Okay, fine.
Great.
Well, yeah.
And of course, I'm out of warranty, but what can you do?
Hello, everyone.
Hello,
and
everybody.
welcome. Oh, if you have not muted yourself, if you could just please do so that we don't have any inadvertent noise joining us during our poetry reading, that would be fantastic. Thank you all so much. My name is Kim Wallace, and I work in the Alumni and Parent Engagement Office, and we're so thrilled that you were joining us for one of our virtual reunion programs. If you haven't already seen the full schedule, it's available on our website. We would love to see you for another one of our events through the rest of this week. And I am so pleased that Professor Emeritus Royal Rhodes has deigned to share his wisdom and knowledge and poetry acumen with us yet again. Some of you may have been able to join us for one of our virtual programs earlier this year. So we are so excited to again present Professor Royal Rhodes. Oh, and I'm so sorry. If you have any questions, please drop those in the chat and we will try to get to as many of those as we can at the end.
Hello to you wonderful folks for looking for a dose of poetry. I have always told students that they should read one poem a day as a meditation or just to have one bit of beauty each day. So what I'm going to talk about is the legacy of poetry that you all as alumni and friends of the college have inherited. It's a rich legacy. There is so much poetry around this college, not only in books, but on trees, in readings, the Kenyon Review, Persimmons, Haika, the BFAC zine, other student publications, the New Sunset Press. We're immersed in poetry, whatever the majors or whatever the interest. Poetry is very much alive in classrooms, but also out of classrooms. So I'm going to read some poems from some much earlier alumni. And on the screen, you can see a photograph that was taken of Randall Jarrell, Robert Lowell, and Peter Taylor. Lowell and Taylor were roommates at Kenyon. And Jarrell was invited to Kenyon to teach freshman composition by John Crow Ransom. And he was a faculty member in residence with students. Those were the days, right? And all three maintained lifelong friendships. Jarrell was a student of, as I said, of John Crow Ransom and Alan Tate. He shared their poetic ideas, but not their politics. Jarrell said his influences were Karl Marx and W.H. Auden. But I'm going to read a poem by Robert Lowell about Randall Jarrell. Go back to the first, thank you. In which Lowell and his name to friends was Cal, after Caligula, Little Boots. But so his friends called him Cal. I was fortunate through friends at Harvard to sit in on classes run by Lowell and attend readings of his work, and also got to know Peter Taylor, his great friend. But this is what Lowell wrote about his other friend, Randall Jarrell. The dream went like a rake of sliced bamboo, slats of dust distracted by a down draw. I woke and I knew I held a cigarette. I looked, there was none, could have been none. I slept off years before I woke again, palming the floor, shaking the sheets. I saw nothing was burning. I awoke. I saw I was holding 2 lighted cigarettes. They come this path, old friends, old buffs of death. Tonight it's Randall, his spark still fire through stubble, his gnawed wrist cradled like kitten. What kept you so long, racing the cooling grindstone of your ambition? You didn't write, you rewrote. But tell me, Cal, why did we live? Why do we die? We see the next slide, please. Many of you may remember this image from the Old Kenyan Bookstore. It was a banner that was near the front of the store, and it shows Lowell on a pink cell phone. I'm not sure which is more incongruous, the sunglasses or the pink telephone. But this is a poem I wrote about that poster. And the poster itself, the image has been generously shared by the manager of the bookstore, Angus, who sent it on to me. A phone call to Robert Lowell. Essayists are stuffy, poets terse. Postmodern prose proves nothing can get worse. But look aloft, the banner overhead, a Kenyonite who raised the Union dead. We need him now when every pen is bent. New criticism's child, whose voice is spent, lost amidst our literary fads that flatten words on tablets, nooks, and pads. Our poet clasps an ancient mobile phone whose ringtone must be known to him alone. A clumsy piece of plastic colored pink. Would Cal use that? Oh, tell us what you think. But Boston Brahmins often acted odd, since all the Lowells spoke direct to God. Some of you may hear the echo of that old saying, for this is dear old Boston, the land of the bean and the cod, where the Cabots talk only to Lowells and Lowells talk only to God. Go to the next slide, please. This is the interior of the Church of the Advent on Brimmer Street in Boston, where the funeral for Robert Lowell was held. I attended with some of Lowell's students and heard Peter Taylor preach the eulogy. Amongst the friends gathered there were Lowell's wife, Lady Carolyn Blackwood, and his little son, Sheridan, Elizabeth Hardwick, Frank Bedart, Elizabeth Bishop, and so many others. The Church of the Advent is a Anglo-Catholic high church church in Boston. Its bells are the ones that were traditionally used every 4th of July for the playing of the 1812 overture beside the Charles River. Peter Taylor read this poem that had been written by Robert Lowell, and it refers in many ways to this church and its historic place in American life. Where the rainbow ends, I saw the sky descending, black and white, not blue. On Boston, where the winters wore the skulls of jack-o'-lanterns on the slates, and hunger's skin and bone retrievers tore the chickadee and shrike. The thorn tree waits its victim, and tonight the worms will eat the deadwood to the foot of Ararat, the scythers, time and death. Helmed locusts move upon the tree of breath, the wild ingrative olive and the root are withered, and a winter drifts to where the pepper pot, ironic rainbow, spans Charles River and its scales of scorched earth miles. I saw my city in the scales, the pans of judgment rising and descending. Piles of dead leaves char the air, and I am a red arrow on this graph of revelations. Every dove is sold. The chapel's sharp-shinned eagle shifts the hold on serpentine, the rainbow's epitaph. In Boston, serpents whistle at the cold. The victim climbs the altar, steps, and sings. Hosanna to the lion, lamb, and beast, who fans the furnace face of is with wings. I breathe the ether of my marriage feast at the high altar gold and a fair cloth. I kneel and the wings beat my cheek. But what can the dove of Jesus give? You now, but wisdom, exile, stand and live. The dove has brought an olive branch to eat. Reference to helmeted locusts, the way sometimes people referred to cicadas. And so this is brood X of the visitation of cicadas, but we haven't had any here this year, but elsewhere in the country, they've emerged on their 17-year cycle. And some of you may recognize also in the poem reference to Pepper Pot, or the bridge connecting Cambridge to Boston. The sections of the bridge had towers that were called the Pepper Pots. We're going to go on to some other older Kenyan poets, and I've asked a group of different alumni who are all great lovers of poetry or even writers of poetry to read some of these older poems or some of their own poems. And we're so fortunate, as I said, to have that ongoing legacy of poetry, ancient and new, here at Kenyon. So the first one will be Marilyn Hahn. And she's going to read the poem by James Wright, class of 52, pictured here. Marilyn graduated in 1984 from Kenyon and went on to a PhD at Harvard Medical School. She was a cell biologist, an editor, a STEAM educator, and was an honors biology major at Kenyon. So she'll be reading to us James Wright, a poet from Martins Ferry, Ohio, who won a Pulitzer Prize for his poetry, who came to Kenyon after being in the US military stationed in Japan and studied with John Crow Ransom. Marilyn?
Blessing by James Wright. Just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight bound softly forth on the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darken with kindness. They have come gladly out of the willows to welcome my friend and me. We step over the barbed wire into the pasture where they have been grazing all day alone. They ripple tensely. They can hardly contain their happiness that we have come. They bow shyly as wet swans. They love each other. There is no loneliness like theirs. At home once more, they begin munching the young tufts of spring in the darkness. I would like to hold the slenderer one in my arms, for she has walked over to me and nuzzled my left hand. She is black and white. Her mane falls wild on her forehead, and the light breeze moves me to caress her long ear that is delicate as the skin over a girl's wrist. Suddenly I realize that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom.
Thank you so much.
A blessing.
This is a picture of Anthony Hecht, who attended Kenyon in 1946 to 47. As I said, he later became the consultant in poetry to the Library of Congress, what we would now call the Poet Laureate of the United States. One of the things that the late Amy Blumenthal and I wanted to push, so hint, hint to alumni, is that the college might think about giving Hecht an honorary degree, because his family and he thought so much of the college. This poem, Saul and David by Hecht, is going to be read by John Hahn, who's the program director of family medicine residency at the University of Pittsburgh. And their focus is on reaching out to the underserved in the wider Pittsburgh community. He was a biology and religious studies major at Kenyon and graduated in 1984. So John.
It's an honor to be asked by Royal Rhodes, one of the great poets of our time, to read this poem, Saul and David, by Anthony Hecht. It was a villainous spirit, snub-nosed, foul of breath, thick-taloned and malevolent, that squatted within him wheresoever he went, and possessed the soul of Saul. There was no peace on pillow or on throne. In dreams, the toothless, dwarfed, and squinty-eyed started a joyful rumor that he had died, unfriended and alone. The doctors were confounded. In his distress, he put aside arrogant ways and condescended to seek among the flocks where they were tended by the youngest son of Jesse, a shepherd boy, but goodly to look upon, unnoticed but God-favored, sturdy of limb, as Michelangelo later imagined him, comely even in his frown. Shall a mere shepherd provide the cure of kings? Heaven delights itself in ironies such as this, in which a boy's fingers would touch Pythagorean strings, and by a modal artistry assemble the very sons of morning, the ranked and choired, heavens in sweet laudation of the Lord, and make Saul cease to tremble. It's an
Thank
honor
you.
to be asked by Royal Rhodes.
Thank you, John. Marilyn and John's son, David, just graduated from Kenyon. So it was all the more appropriate that he read a poem about Saul and David. Can we go back another slide? And here we have Sasha Hamilton, who now teaches English at Barnard College. She graduated in 1989 from Kenyon, is a noted poet, received a Guggenheim Fellowship, and is perhaps better known even as the editor of the collected letters of Robert Lowell and his letters with Elizabeth Bishop, and another astounding collection she edited, letters dealing with the publication of Lowell's collection called The Dolphin. Saskia would probably not want me to reveal this, but she is one of the few people I know who has had a popular song written about her by Nick Hornby with Ben Folds in their album Lonely Avenue. And I think that's another star in her crown. Another faculty member at Kenyon, Anna Sun, had a song written about her by a Kenyon group called Walk the Moon that was just off the charts popular. So we all have to listen at some point to Nick Hornby singing about Saskia Hamilton. One lyric says, and my teacher told me that she's dactylic, Saskia Hamilton. So I'm going to read Saskia's poem, Inside. No one to hear, but records for the broken player. No reason for order, but order persists from breakfast to bath to work. Rain falling at one speed, the windows darkening and blurring, accident beating against belief, a loud engine, which is one way to say one thing, the floors swept daily, though it takes at least 1 hour for the first, one for the last. In the pages of a book, quick studies of gesture, tense of hands. We go on to the next, please. This is Jess Lieberman, who graduated from Kenyon in 2014. She's now executive assistant at Creative Arts Agency in LA. She received the Academy of American Poetry Prize and was, as an undergraduate, published in the Kenyon Review. I'm a lucky possessor of a copy of her senior honors collection of poetry, Selim, taken from her readings of the book of Genesis. So now we'll hear Jessica read one of her poems.
Hi there, I'm Jess Lieberman, class of 2014. First, I'd like to thank Royal for asking me to participate and read a poem today. Royal was one of the first professors at Kenyon that encouraged my love of poetry, and I'll be forever grateful to him for that and for many other things. And I'd also like to thank the Kenyon Review for first publishing this poem in 2015. It's called Chapter 1. Upstairs in the house of language, he plays with the serpents as he writes them, as he daydreams of rain and foreshadows it. When he blinks on metaphors, he'll watch the moon change for a while as we write volumes interpreting the sea. He pressed stars between pages like flowers for one he couldn't stand to be close by. Their light years give shadow to his stories, turn them into us.
Thank you, Jess. This is Daniel Popek. Dan Popek is a much honored poet. He graduated in 2007 from Kenyon. His collection, Fear of Description, won the 2018 National Poetry Series Award. He's familiar to folks who have had connections with the Kenyon Young Writers program and has given readings at Kenyon. Just the other day, the Kenyon Review had him and some other writers talking about the craft of writing and what it's meant for their lives. So Dan is going to read us one of his poems.
Hi Royal, hi everyone. This poem is called Klaxon. Like a boy green of face, you are looking elsewhere with your arms. I hear this ribboned alarm, so I'm waiting as I was. Period and end of sentence. I'd love with a klaxon to move you in penance, like a titanium friar across this wooded hell. What were you, prior? You drained down your cell, and neutral as a fingerprint, equal as a clog, you stopped to abhor. For until then, I'd never sweated out a pair of doors. Which is so Noah's Ark, I'm like my own eclogue, talking up these idiot hills. I think cruelty is embrace. When on an avenue I meet a horse dressed as a visa, marching in place on pills. So verse isn't blind so much as vampiric, plugged into its volume's celestial drill.
Thank you, Dan. This is a familiar building for everyone. And I think it's an iconic image to ground us in that legacy of poetry. Think about the history of poetry at Kenyon, the founding and the refounding of the Kenyon Review, first with John Crow Ransom and the support of Roberta Teal Schwartz Chalmers. And then over the years, the different programs that brought poets to Kenyon, through the Kenyon Review and through various classes. Sheila Jordan, the wife of President Phil Jordan, was also one of the great advocates of poetry and a really amazing poet herself. Linda Metzler, a retired professor of Spanish, for a number of years was the Kenyon contact person for the Ohio Circuit of Poets, entertaining them, scheduling them, transporting them, feeding them, all behind the scenes. And alumni will remember the various teachers of poetry that they had. This is just an incredibly short, abbreviated list. But people like Janet McAdams, who just retired from Kenyon, David Baker, Andy Grace, Aaron Ballou, Natalia Shapiro, Jerry Harp, the beloved Phil Church, Fred Turner, Victor Rodriguez Nunez, and on and on and on. And that is the legacy that all alums at Kenyon are the inheritors of. So we see the next slide, also be a familiar image. So whether at first year sing or senior sing, one of the great ceremonies is the incoming or outgoing class being together and singing a number of Kenyan songs under the direction of the much beloved Doc Locke. And this year, while there wasn't the opportunity because of the pandemic to have that sing, they did stage a singing of Kokosing Farewell with the chamber singers on this spot, all socially distanced. So this is a poem of farewell I wrote in conjunction with that ceremony, addressed to alumni from every year. Poetry is spoken here, not prose. Here the hill, a magic mountain, rises. Instead of ravens, finely sculptured crows line the roof of Ransom. Such surprises are commonplace. The slow Kokosing bends, nudges time like Eden, creatures play. Deer and owls and humans act like friends. Every hour tolls a perfect day. Remember this and more the rest of time. Come back to Middle Path, perhaps in dreams. Home is where the heart and spirit rhyme, and where you still remain, it sometimes seems. Sing farewell, but leave your gentle grace. Every class to come will feel your trace. The next slide, please. You're all, as alumni and friends of the college, familiar with this song, Kokosing Farewell. So we can't have a session together at Kenyon without requiring a homework assignment. So your homework assignment, as you correspond with, reach out to other alumni, is to write a poem. Not a long epic, not something of a formal genre, but just to select one line from Kokosing Farewell, a line that you remember and have in your heart, and then compose a line or two to go with that, that sums up your feelings about the college, your experiences on campus, your relationships with your friends and instructors, the staff, the maintenance workers, all of the people behind the scenes who keep the college running even within a pandemic, and to share that at some point with your friends. And I'd love to see what you come up with, and we can share those. I'll give you an example, not the best, but this is my attempt at doing my own assignment. I always thought that one of the benefits of becoming a professor was that you didn't have to take your own examinations or do the homework that you assigned. I was usually looking for the students to give me the answers that I was looking for in those assignments. But this is my attempt at that homework assignment. Better than meadows sweet with asphodel, the Elysian fields, or cherubs climbing poles, are the better angels we meet on middle path. You are all the better angels of this place. I'd be happy to try to respond to any questions you have, or anything else. We have some time for that now. Maybe someone has already begun thinking about what line from Composing Farewell they'd like to use. Or if you have a poem you'd like to share with alumni, either your own or something that strikes you as being important in your life. I think poetry can be not only an aesthetic experience, but also a deeply spiritual experience. I tell people that it's not just the poetry that we or others write, but it's the poetry of nature around us. A group of student curators at the Gunn Gallery this year helped to put together a program called Art of the Trees. And they asked me to write some poems for it. And one of the amazing things that they did was they organized small groups of students to take a walk around the campus and listen to the trees that have, in many instances, been here for over 200 years and seen so many of the graduations and so many of the years pass by. And they also stopped along the way and read one of the poems I wrote for specific trees. And I'm deeply grateful to those students and to Jody Kovash, to Chris Folman and others at the gallery who let me participate in that wonderful project. You're probably all thinking about lunch at this point. And I think that is another kind of poetry, the culinary poetry. We're so lucky to have those artists in the Kenyon Inn in the village. So if there aren't other questions, I'll just bid you all farewell and hope to see you in person again sometime.
Thank you so much, Royal.
This was incredible. Thank you, Royal.
Thank you, Jess. It was cool.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you. And thanks to all the readers, really fabulous.
I think I saw Ruth Staveley.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Long time.
Yeah.
And Sims, dear heart, is also tuning in. And Jim Finn, who is one of the remarkable people in the world and great supporter of poetry. Holly Singh from Florida, our expert in India, poor India at this point. So I hope you'll all keep in touch with alumni. One of the great joys for me, even though I'm retired, has been to keep in touch with alumni from many different years. You are what the modern language department used to call the native informants. About what's going on in the world. And I appreciate your reaching out. Doesn't have to be on a regular basis, but I think about 200 of you do keep in touch with weddings and births and new jobs and things like that. So it's always wonderful to hear from you. Even better to see you. So if you're in the Gambier area, while you're seeing all the new construction, and I hope you will stop by or contact me so we can have some coffee out on the lawn.
Sounds good. We're actually going up this weekend. This would have been my 35th. Well, it is my 35th reunion, but not in person, sadly.
Well, as you Zoom together, think that this is only a temporary distance, and it has made it possible for people to keep in touch. I'm going to be spending the month of June in Boston, seeing my 6-year-old namesake, Christopher Royal, whose 6th birthday it is. And we've Zoomed together. And he said, I never see you. And I said, well, we see each other on Zoom. He said, that's not real. So we'll have some in-person time. He told his grandmother he was going to stay at the house while I was there because I know it's Roy's special time. So I want to say, kid, you had me already. You didn't have to hit me in the heart. Well,
again, thanks so much. Safe travels to you.
Oh, thank you, Jim. That's
Sure.
wonderful. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and whatever other programs that have wonderfully been put together for alumni you're able to tune into, and God bless and Godspeed. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.